Lawyer Lauren Monroe has been assigned a case in which she would be offered $1 million, but the downside is that she would have to defend a criminal. But Lauren is known for her honesty and thirst for justice, so she declines the offer. On another side is William Monroe, Lauren's younger brother, and a well-known politician who wants to be the mayor of New York. Near the Monroes' summer house, their father, Archer Monroe, popularly known as a wealthy businessman, is seen staggering and losing breath. He manages to get into his car, but along the way, he passes out, crashing the car into a tree. Meanwhile, Lauren is in a press conference when one of the reporters brings to her notice that her dad was found lifeless near the summer house. Lauren is distraught by the news, but the reporters urge her to make a statement or a comment about what happened to her father. Just then, she is led away by her colleague, Eddie. The scene then opens at a burial ceremony with the Monroe family, Lauren, William, their mother Catherine, Lauren's husband, Scott, and their daughter, Claire. After the funeral, they head back to the summer house, where William approaches Lauren. He tells her it's weird that their dad died of a heart attack when he's the healthiest in the family. But Lauren is more interested in what will happen to their mom. William then suggests that they move her somewhere close to them. He also lets Lauren know that he will only be staying until after the reading of the will. He then informs her that their dad was proud of her, but Lauren dismisses it, knowing she always felt their dad hated her. And the will was just the right moment to prove it. Catherine is left in sole control of the family's estate. William is given $20 million, and Lauren is left with $1 million. $50 million was also allocated to be split equally between the police and firemen's fund. No better way to tell someone how much you dislike them. When their father's lawyer, Harold, is done reading the will, Lauren approaches him to thank him for his hard work. But that's when Harold informs her about a special inheritance just for Lauren. He hands her a sealed envelope and leads her. Later, Lauren opens the envelope to find a small wooden box inside. And inside the box, she finds a flash drive, which she quickly connects to her laptop, only to find a video recording of her father. He informed her about a secret she must take to her grave, and for security reasons, he gives her a vague clue concerning the location of the inheritance he's talking about. Lauren then heads out of the house to find out what it is, but on her way out, Scott stops her. He wants to be sure that she's fine after being given just $1 million when there was more than enough to spare, but Lauren assures him that she's fine and asks to be alone. The clue takes her to the woods, behind the house, to a spot where she finds a hidden trapdoor. With the key from the envelope, she opens the door and heads down to check it out. On reaching, she finds a creepy-looking man, whom she thought to be dead. She tries to touch the man, but he jerks up, scaring her off. Lauren runs out of the place, shuts the door, and heads back to the summer house without looking back. On entering, she dials 911, but immediately remembers what her dad had asked of her, so she terminates the call. That evening, Lauren stays back at the summer house after bidding everyone goodnight. She promises to see Scott and Claire the following night, as she has other plans this night. After everyone leaves, she snoops around, reminiscing about the time she got into a fight with her dad about not wanting to follow the career path he chose for her. During her snooping, she finds a gun, which she leaves and takes with her back to the underground room. On entering, she finds the man asleep. She calls him several times, but he doesn't respond, so she quickly steals some fingerprint samples. While doing that, the man wakes up, startling her. She then realizes that she should have covered her face, so she runs off and returns with a ridiculous mask on. However, the man tells her that hiding behind the mask is useless. He tells her everything about herself, from her name to her husband's and daughters, proving that hiding her identity is futile. Lauren then asks him who he is, but he takes her back and forth by replying out of context. He then asks for steak and other delicacies, which he probably never had in a while. Lauren reprimands him, asking for answers, but he tells her he'll only tell her the truth when she has brought all the food he mentioned. A while later, Lauren returns to the house and sends the fingerprint details to her detective friend Emilio Sanchez to help her discover who it could be. Later that day, she goes to get all that food, but on her way back to the house, Scott calls her to ask why she hasn't been taking her calls. Lauren then apologizes, which Scott accepts, but he reminds her that Claire's recital is in the evening before Scott hangs up. Lauren returns to the underground room and offers the food to the man, who starts eating almost immediately. She then demands answers, but he still doesn't say anything useful to her. Lauren gets fed up and tells him that when she comes back, she expects everything to be spoiled. At the surface, she calls Eddie and asks him to take charge of the trial she was expected to handle, saying she'll be late. But she doesn't even give him a choice and hangs up. After the call, she returns to the man, who finally introduces himself as Morgan Warner. Morgan tells her about their past, during the time when her dad was still young and careless. He claimed her father was into business, cards, politics, and women. He informs her that they both had a few drinks on the day of the incident, but Archer was still driving when they accidentally hit someone. Following that, Archer and Morgan buried the body in some unknown place, while Archer had him locked up so that he wouldn't call the cops on him. After spending weeks and months locked up, he begged Archer to end his misery, but instead, Archer handed him a vial to kill himself with. However, Lauren is not sure whether to believe his story, and to prove that he isn't lying, Morgan lets her in on a secret, her father's mistress, Sophia Fior. He also gives her an address, so she can go and confirm how true it is. Rage-filled, Lauren storms out, locking him again. On her way to the trial, she tells Emilio to check if there were any missing persons named Morgan Warner in the 80s, saying her dad left him something in his will. As Morgan awaits Lauren's return, he repeatedly recites the recipe for key lime pie. Meanwhile, Lauren goes to the address she was given after the trial. She finally meets Sophia and discovers that her father has a son with her, Alex. Sophia, however, tells her that Alex doesn't know she exists and that they were living their lives before Lauren decided to find them. Overwhelmed with such a revelation, she rushes out of the apartment. A while later, she storms into Harold's office, calling him names for lying to them all these years. But Harold tells her that he is in no position to interfere. She asks him if there is any more information that could implicate the family, but Harold tells her she'd be better off not knowing anything. Lauren then goes to see her mom to find out if she's heard of the name Morgan Warner when William joins them, saying he's losing votes because the people are accusing him of paying the union reps. He then asks for Lauren's help with a rally the next day. Afterward, Lauren returns to the underground bunker to get more information from Morgan. But Morgan tells her to dig up the body that he and her dad buried years ago. She asks for the location, but Morgan tells her he can only recall if she takes him there. She's reluctant at first, but he promises not to do anything. Lauren then puts him in cuffs and places him at gunpoint, leading him out of the bunker. On the surface, Morgan gets overwhelmed seeing the outside world again. Suddenly, she gets a call from Scott, who wants to know why she missed her daughter's recital, why she hasn't been calling, and what she's been up to. But Lauren tells him that she can't talk right now and immediately hangs up. After that, she takes the wheels while Morgan directs her to the place where the body is buried. They arrive at the scene, and she asks him to sit still or she'll shoot. He does as he is told, and Lauren starts to dig. Lauren eventually finds the body after a while of hopeless digging. She quickly patches up the sand in disbelief and bundles Morgan back into the car and back to the bunker. She asks him to put his restraints back on, but Morgan pleads, asking what more proof he could give her to earn his freedom. She tells him that she's going to need more than a body and a mistress to believe him, but he again tells her that he can't conjure up evidence. All Morgan wishes is to live the rest of the few years he may still have left and not rot away in an underground bunker despite being innocent. But instead, he complies and gets back in his restraints. She then apologizes and leaves him locked up. That night, She goes to see Claire, who is fast asleep, and Scott lying next to her. She apologizes to Claire and spends the night with them. The following day, she arrives at the court for the continuation of the trial, where she finds an illegal company by the name Gypsy Rose in the list of companies the perpetrator worked with. The name immediately rings a bell, as Morgan had previously mentioned that her father used to call Sophia his Gypsy Rose. She returns to Harold's to question him about it, but Harold tells her again to stop asking questions she doesn't want to hear the answers to. She then goes to see her brother to ask for advice under the cover that she's hypothetically speaking. William then tells her that if someone is a threat to the family, then he'd either pay that person off or throw his body in a river. With that, Lauren returns to the bunker with a bag of clothes and asks Morgan for reassurance. He then tells her that he'll never look back again if he walks out that door. She tosses the bag to him and asks him to clean up, as he'll be leaving in the evening. That afternoon, she meets up with Harold and asks him to set up a Cayman Islands account with $1 million and bring her $100,000 in cash. Harold wants to know who it's for, but Lauren tells him it's for a man her dad wronged. She then asks for a fake ID and a jet to take him there. Harold wants to ensure she's not making a mistake, but Lauren tells him that she can't tell them anything. Later, she returns to the bunker to see Morgan all dressed up and ready to leave. But before that, Lauren asks him what her dad thought about her. And like everyone else says, Morgan tells her that he is proud of her. Lauren then asks for the truth, in which she is told that her dad had high hopes for the person he was going to become, but she threw it all away. However, he loved her dearly and came to accept her for what she had become. He then reveals to her that her brother had paid off the union reps and gives her stated proof. After hearing that, Lauren goes to confront her brother about it, while Morgan remains locked up, reciting the recipe for key lime pie over and over as he awaits her return. She warns her brother never to lie to her again and returns to the bunker to finally set Morgan free. Lauren accompanies him to the reserve jet, where Harold awaits. She gives Morgan a last warning about what she would do if he ever comes back, and with that, Lauren watches them both board the jet before leaving. She returns home to clear out the bunker when she gets a voicemail from Emilio, who has sent information about the fingerprint to the house. Just then, she gets a text from her mom, who's at the house, where she has all the evidence about Morgan lying around. She quickly rushes back to the house to meet a shocking revelation. Her mom tells her that the guy in the photo is actually called Carson and that he's a bad person. She then reveals to her mom that the man said his name was Morgan and that her dad had him chained up in a bunker in the backyard. She also makes it clear to her mom that this was her inheritance from her father. Her mom then asks where he is now, and Lauren reveals that she has let him go already, but she asks her mom to lock up, saying she'll fix everything. Lauren rushes out of the house and back to where the jet was, only to realize that they never left. What's terrifying is that she finds Harold's lifeless body right next to it, and no signs of Morgan or Carson, if that's what we're calling him now. She then hurries back to the house, but is unable to find her mother. Realizing where she could possibly be, she rushes back to the bunker. Thankfully, her mom is there but unconscious. She tries to wake her up but sees Carson at the end of the hall. He then turns off the lights and starts to taunt her before knocking her out. A while later, Lauren wakes up bound to the shackles that Carson was locked in. He mockingly apologizes that it is her and not her dad in chains and reveals that he has been trying for so long to get her father back. His chance came after managing to inject him with the same poison he had given Carson to end his life with. The poison was what led to her father's heart attack, sadly. He also reveals that everything was a trap to get him on Lauren's side, knowing that Lauren has always been a soft and honest person. Just then, Catherine wakes up, prompting Carson to tell the real story. It turns out that on the night when everything started, Carson had taken advantage of Catherine. After the unfortunate incident, Catherine tells Archer everything, causing Archer to attack Carson and drag him along with himself. While driving, Both men started to argue and eventually hit a young boy whom they buried in secret. But with that, Carson had leverage over Archer, which was why Archer knocked him out and had him locked up in the bunker till death. Archer wanted Carson to suffer for all his misdeeds and could only grant him the chance to end his life by himself. Lauren then tries to reason with him. She promises to reveal everything her family is hiding, but he won't hurt her family in exchange. But Carson doesn't care about that. All he wishes is for her and her mother to go through the same thing he went through for 30 years while he tears down their family's legacy. Lauren then attacks him, but he pushes her off, and just when he reveals that he's her father, Catherine fatally shoots him. With Carson finally gone, Catherine sits beside her daughter and tells her that she's a Monroe and that they'll always look out for each other. He takes her hand and asks what Lauren thinks they should do about him. Lauren, who's still trying to process a lot, then tells her mom that he disappeared 30 years ago. After gathering her thoughts, she pours gasoline all over the place. She and her mom exit the bunker before setting it ablaze. They both remain there, making sure that every single thing is burnt to ashes. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2020 movie Inheritance, directed by Vaughn Stein, starring Lily Collins, Simon Pegg, Connie Nielsen, Chase Crawford, and Patrick Warburton. Who else knew that Morgan was lying the whole time? And do you think Lauren did the right thing by letting him go even before finding out who he really was? Let us know what you think about this movie in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.